All right, this is Donnan and Dayne from UGA and we get to add another D name to the title this time. Donnan Dayne and Davis, Coach, you have brought in one of your former ESPN coworkers to join us.
Yeah, very fortunate to have one of the best guys that I've ever been involved with in a lot of different areas, but Rece Davis, who is really the ultimate in knowing what's going on in college football and also what's going on with the draft and everything. Glad to have you with us here, Rece.
I'm glad to be with you guys. Hope you guys are doing well.
Doing well. You want to start it off there, Dane, and then I'll take it over.
Yeah, Rece, it's I just got to know, you worked with Coach in the media before I did. So tell me some stories about you working with Coach Donnan up at the Worldwide Leader.
I tell you what, we learned a lot, or I did anyway, from him. I mean, Jim's obviously one of the brightest football minds around, had great success, and is a tremendous storyteller. So we always had a really good time. And I think the thing that always impressed me about him is that he's so family oriented. He not only shares stories of his family, but he's interested in yours as well. So it's we've developed a really good friendship. My favorite thing about Jim is that if I'm doing a game and I'm screwing something up or I'm not seeing something I ought to be seeing while we're broadcasting the game, I'll get a text from him and he'll say, "Hey, watch this safety in the coverage. He's not doing what you guys think he's doing." And it's always been great. It's been a great friend, great to work with.
Well, you never make many mistakes, but I also always like to add a little bit there, let you know I'm watching you. But hey, one of the things that all the fans here at Georgia take a lot of pride in is our campus and our team and all. And last year, you had a chance to be here firsthand. I mean, you've been here a lot of times, but what was it like for the Notre Dame game, having game day here?
It was tremendous. I think one of the most fun things about the show is to go to a place where the show hasn't been in a long time, where football is really important. Clearly, that's the case at Georgia, and to have a huge, intersectional game against Notre Dame with all that comes with that name brand. The morning show with the great crowd behind us, the electricity in the stadium that night, the light show, everything was it was as good as it gets in terms of a college football Saturday for us. We were obviously treated very well and had a great scene on Saturday morning for the show.
Yeah, and just for the backdrop, you invited me to come over there to your makeshift office you had in one of the dorms. What's it like for you to go in? Do you usually go in like a Thursday, or how does it work for your prep and all, and how many people are involved there and getting the whole show together?
We probably, all said and done, Coach, probably close to 100 people that travel. That includes the truck drivers and the guys who set up the set, who work their tails off, and the camera people and audio people, and everything that it takes to put on a show of that magnitude. People in the truck, directors and audio directors and graphic operators, all those things that I think people forget about that are huge and important parts of our team. And we get in there on Thursday typically. And Thursday is a day that I like to get in kind of midday and maybe get out a little bit and kind of get a feel for the campus, but also really try to get some work done on Thursday. We usually try to hit one of the local spots on Thursday night for dinner, so you can sort of sense the atmosphere and get a connection to the place where you're going to be on Saturday morning. But by the time Friday rolls around, I'm sort of holed up in that office all day preparing, and we don't have a teleprompter or script per se, but I write extensive notes and know subject matter that I want to talk about. If I'm leading to a piece, I'll write that, even though I don't have it prompter, so I never deliver it exactly as I write it. I don't want to memorize it, but I just kind of want to organize some thoughts and be very thorough in preparation and so forth for wherever the discussion might lead. So I'm usually in that office from about 9 in the morning until 5 or 6, and then Friday nights I don't do anything. It's DoorDash / room service, depending on where I am. Stay in the room, right? Maybe get 4 or 5 hours sleep, and then go in about 6:30 the next morning and get started.
Well, it's obvious you do tremendous prep, and you got a great relationship with your cast. But what's it like working with my old buddy, the last guy recruited at Georgia, David Pollack? What's it like working with old David?
Well, I'll tell you this. David Pollack is the little brother that I never wanted. Actually, David and I have become really close friends, first from working those Thursday night games together. And, I'm a lot older than David is, but he is like a little brother or nephew or something to me. He's like family. There's not a better guy in the world. There's not a more sincere, genuine person out there than David Pollack. And, I'm really pleased for his success. I think he's just he's a rising superstar. He just is a football savant. He just craves more and more tape and information, and he's just he's got a great personality. So I think he's got all the things that you need to be a star in this industry, and he is now he's a Hall of Famer and well deserved. He's a Hall of Famer on and off the field in my book. And I hope he doesn't listen to this.
Hey, no question about that. And he does a really good job here in the community with so many things with his foundation. And, he's a football coach there. Has one of the guys that works with us at UGA Sports, Brent Rollins, is his offensive coordinator. And they really do a good job of training those kids and building them up. And he's actually built him a full gym beside his house now, so he can play basketball at night when he wants to. So this guy is very, very competitive. Next time you come in, he'll probably have you over there.
I've seen the pictures and have heard in excruciating detail everything that he's gone into to work. David would have worked well in the 1500s or whenever we had the barter. Whenever we had the barter system, because Pollack can make a deal, but that gym that he's built, I mean, they got room for batting cages and full court basketball, and I think they've got a state of the art floor or something that he got from somewhere that somebody wasn't using anymore, and he's got everything in there, and they've got room to do stuff outside. So he's built like an entire wonderland for his family out there and for all of his friends, and as you rightly mentioned, for all of the kids that he is working with and mentoring in the Athens area, which is really impressive as well.
Yeah, we're going to get into a little bit more about the college football season in a minute here, but yeah, you're getting ready to do which is probably the first time that I can ever remember anything like this happening with the draft for ABC, I think. What's going into that situation, and how are you guys getting ready, and what's going to be the format as far as, are you going to be at home, or how's this going to work?
I'll be in studio. There will be a few of us in the studio in Bristol, but socially distanced. For the most part, everybody else will be at home. David's going to be at home. Kirk will be at home. I think Desmond will. I think that there are a few people who will be in Bristol, and they're taking great care to make sure that everybody's separated and safe and all of that type of thing. So Maria Taylor and Jesse Palmer and Tom Rinaldi, I believe, will be in Bristol, but will be spread out and doing different things. The preparation for it, Jim, is not really different from what we did last year. The ABC show takes on a little bit of a different type of character. While there is certainly still plenty of X's and O's to be discussed and hardcore team needs and all of that, the ABC show, the objective for that show has been to make it a little more broad and make it a little more personality driven. And by that, I mean, when DeAndre Swift gets drafted, it'll be a little bit less about, how he's going to fit in with the team that he is going to, though there will be some, and a little bit more of what has led him to this point, why people should care about him, what the team that drafted him is getting in terms of a player and a guy. And, we'll be able to use our experiences from covering the sport to do that. We did it for the first time last year with a draft in Nashville. Certainly be a major difference from having tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people lining the streets of Nashville for the draft, serving as our backdrop for the show, as opposed to, us being socially distanced and Commissioner Goodell being in his basement, announcing the picks. So, it'll be different from that standpoint, but in terms of the storytelling, the objective of the show, all of that remains the same. We think it'll be a good broadcast. Certainly there'll be some technical challenges as well, but our guys have been working hard to be ready to meet those.
Well, I know watching it last year, of course, I'm in your number one fan from that standpoint, but I really thought the human interest part that you guys were able to bring into, with your background being around these guys and with game day and covering their games. And, a lot of people don't realize when you go in to do a game, you actually meet with some of the players too and talk to them a little bit. And just explain how that would go for a fan. Let's just say you're doing a game for Georgia versus your old alma mater, Alabama, and Georgia is the home team. How would you do that? And then how would you talk to the visiting players?
Usually when you do that, Jim, you would talk to the visiting coaching staff and the players, usually with a conference call at some point during the week that's convenient for them. There are occasions where you might go to the hotel the night before the game. That sort of depends on taste, what the coach wants to do and all that kind of thing. So the visiting team you would usually talk to earlier in the week, and typically the home team the day before the game. I know I usually do 1 or 2 games a year on Saturday night for Fowler for whatever the situation is. Last year I did the LSU-Texas game, and we talked with LSU during the week. And then on Friday at lunch, we went over and met with Tom Herman and Sam Ellinger and Colin Johnson and all, and you talk to them not only about game plan, but you get some background and some stories. And as it just so happens, I knew that I was going to do that game. So I actually went down and spent a day at Texas during summer camp last year and just, sort of background stuff. And I didn't really prepping for the game, just watched practice, visited with Tom for a while, and visited with several players. So some of those things sort of build on themselves, but the week of the game, you'll usually the day before, you'll meet with the coaches. The good ones who aren't too paranoid will tell you what to watch for. The other ones will continue to say things like, we've got to be sound in the kicking game and not miss tackles. And we go, yes, and we understand the sun also must rise in the east and all that. But the good ones will the ones that are a little more comfortable, and you got to ask good questions, but they'll tell you, they'll tell you what to watch for and trust your professionalism that you're not going to go out and give away a game plan. But I've always sort of laughed at that because, everything in the world is out there, not only on social media, but through the various devices where you can watch every snap of every game ever played. There aren't too many secrets out there, and certainly not many secrets that I could divulge. And even if I did, you're going to have to show them sooner or later, and you guys are so adept at making adjustments. You'll make the adjustment pretty quickly. So I think a lot of that is just sort of the ingrained nature of coaches to be a little bit secretive when in preparation.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Just there's not a lot of secrets, but I always felt like, and you brought that out, going to a practice, you just can't beat that. If you're prepping for a game and be able to watch a kid live as compared to watching the tape is just so much, and you get a feel for the practice organization and how they got it set up on what their game plan is going to be, what they're doing against the scout team. And then once the game starts, you can do a better job with that. So going into the draft, there's a couple of players here at Georgia. Obviously, we have a first-round draft choice for sure, without question, and Thomas at tackle. But you mentioned Swift, and could you just go over what your take is on why so many running backs maybe slip to the second round as compared to a first-round ability with him? Because we all know what he can do. But what's the take up there from the pro coaches along that line?
Short shelf lives. It's so hard to run the ball in a dominant fashion in that league. I guess the Titans, Derrick Henry last year might have changed that a little bit, and Christian McCaffrey certainly successful. You have to have a good running back. And, I noticed the other day when they paid McCaffrey, I think the owner of the Panthers or the GM of Panthers said you always pay your running backs. But I also think there's a little bit of a mentality that you have to move the ball through the air and that you can find a running back. And there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that you can indeed do that. You got guys, undrafted guys, going for 200-plus yards in the playoffs last year, in the NFL. So I think there's a little bit of the way the game has changed to more of a passing game, the feeling that you can't expend that capital on a player who might only be marginally better than than someone you could get in a later round or pick up as a free agent or, whatever the case might be. And so I think that's one of the things that causes running backs to slip if you're not in that ultra elite Adrian Peterson, type category. Because heck, I mean, even the yards that Derrick Henry put up last year, I think he slipped into the second round. He was not a first round pick coming off Heisman Trophy season.
Exactly, and that you did a good job of explaining that. And we just saw where McCaffrey signed for $16 million, but I didn't realize that after his first 2 years, he had more total yards, combined yardage, than Barry Sanders did. So, I mean, the guy's got some unbelievable ability out of the backfield, just a very tremendous athlete on top of it. So, going into our draft, too, you've had a chance to watch these guys, and certainly Jake Fromm's had a magnificent career here for Georgia. And, it's all over the ballpark about – and we're not going to ask you to be Todd McShay or Mel Kiper, but, just watching Jake over the years, how do you project him as a pro quarterback?
I think a solid guy who is likely to be a long-time backup. And it's nothing. Look, he may very well be, unless he winds up, drafted by Tampa Bay and is in the quarterback room with Tom Brady. He may wind up going to a place where he's the smartest quarterback in the room. I think the question with Jake, and I know you don't have to have an Elway arm or Jeff George arm, to succeed in the NFL, but I think that's the question. Can he consistently make all the throws? I think everybody is completely convinced, as am I, that he will almost always make the right decisions. And I noticed something the other day in reading some articles that he'd been working with his quarterback coach, who I believe is still David Morris at down at Quarterback Country. And they had been, working on some footwork things. He thinks he's going to improve his velocity. Look, if he is such a smart guy and such a tough competitor, if he shows, plenty of arm in the NFL, then he might have a chance to exceed those expectations. But I do think, from what I understand, he's blown people away in the interview process and with his knowledge and just, his demeanor and everything. So I think you're going to see Jake get a good opportunity, and I hope that he gets in a good situation in an offense and a scheme and an organization that values guys who are really savants in the game and understand how to make decisions. And I hope he gets his chance to play. And I might have just said that I think he'll be a long-time backup. I hope he proves me wrong and goes to a bunch of Pro Bowls. That'd be great, because I think the world of him as a young man and as a competitor.
Yeah, everybody here feels the same way about that. And, I think just adding my 2 cents about any quarterback, getting in the right system and having the opportunity at the right time means so much. I've had quarterbacks that I thought, were can't miss, that got with the wrong coach, a defensive coach, or got with the right coach who really understood him. So we'll see how that all falls out. And also, it's just a big issue right now, and you have probably as much insight as anybody into the Tua situation on the injury, everything about it. We've all been so impressed with him off the field, like Jake, and kind of kid he is. And how do you project him now? I mean, it's up in the air about his injuries, but he certainly had one of the most storied careers of any quarterback to ever play for Alabama.
I know this is not going to be popular, because let me offer the caveat first that I think in my lifetime, the 2 greatest single seasons of quarterback play that I've ever seen, single seasons, were Cam Newton in 2010 and Joe Burrow last year. Completely understand. I think it's the right pick for the Bengals to take Joe Burrow number 1 overall. Home state guy, everything. Absolutely the right thing to do. That said, if healthy, I think Tua is the best quarterback in the draft. And, so I thought really Chris Mortensen pointed something out on social media the other day about how it might not be accurate. Now, if you have legitimate medical concerns, everyone understands this. But to say that a guy is brittle or he's injury prone or whatever, Mort pointed out a couple of examples. Andrew Luck comes in and, to me, was as good a quarterback prospect as I've ever seen coming into the league. Relatively clean bill of health. and he has to retire early because he has injuries. Matthew Stafford, Georgia guy, if memory serves, clean bill of health, then kept getting injured early in his career, got this little label, oh, he's injury prone. And then if I'm not mistaken, until this most recent mishap went like 8.5 years or something ridiculous without missing a start. Mort's point is injuries sometimes are a little bit of luck or unluckiness. And so I watched the workout tape that Trent Dilfer and Mort put out on Tua. I think the question is still, can he take a hit? Or not can he, but is his hip ready to take a hit in terms of when he would be able to get back on the field? But he looked good moving it, and I just think that if he's healthy, I think he's the best quarterback in the draft. And I think if the Dolphins choose another quarterback that they will regret it. It'll be one of those things that we look back on in a few years and go, what in the world were they thinking? And, but that's, I'm very high on his prospects. Obviously the caveat being that the hip is as good as it is reported to be.
Yeah, people need to realize, go back 2 seasons and compare the seasons that, regardless of the system, the way Tua played at Bama and the way Burrow, what he did for LSU in 2018. I mean, it was just incredible, the difference in the two that year. But certainly the system helped Burrow, but he's very talented too, and he's a good player. But I think you got to look at the whole body of work. Tua's is just unbelievable.
Well, I tell you this, Jim, and you being the quarterback guru that you are, you can tell me if I'm wrong. I was very skeptical of Joe the first year. And even I said a little while ago that I went and spent a day at Texas. I also spent a day at LSU this summer, and I watched him, and he looked different, certainly, and the scheme looked different watching practice. That was obvious, but I was still skeptical. And then I called the game, and I was like, okay, he's better. And over the course of the season, I wouldn't even say that I was a complete believer after Texas, but he made a believer out of me. And I don't know that in all the years I've been doing this, and the first football season I remember is 1971 when I was, 5 going on 6 years old. I don't ever remember a guy improving that drastically from one year to the next, and to the point when you watch him play that it looked like actual legitimate improvement and didn't look like a hot streak. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's made a believer out of me. Just because I might say that I think if healthy, Tua is the best quarterback in the draft, that doesn't mean I think he's head and shoulders above Joe. I don't believe that. I think Joe is right there and has the potential to be outstanding, but he has to, like Tua, like anybody else, unless they have such a force of will, like a Peyton Manning, or something, to demand that the system around them sort of fits under them, and there's no way you can avoid the success. Virtually every quarterback ever, even I would say, even to some degree, I bet even Peyton would say that he needed to be in some type of, compliant organization that allowed him to maximize his skills. But he's a little bit of that guy like that, sort of a force of nature that demands everyone around him get in line with him. But even Joe Burrow, Tua, Justin Herbert, anybody else you might like, Jacob Eason, anybody you like out of this class, we're going to have to get in the right situation. If you start putting guys, even, no matter what you think of Baker Mayfield, you start putting guys in situations like Baker, where he's been through coaches and coordinators and play callers, it starts to derail a career, and guys have a hard time reaching their potential when that happens.
Well, let's get back to Georgia football here as we wind down here, because time goes pretty quickly, and I know you're getting ready for a big conference call with ABC. But from the standpoint of the job that Kirby Smart has done here with this program, how can you relate that on a national basis? Because all of us around here, we look through rose-colored glasses and see everything so good. But from the outside, and of course you've known Kirby when he was at Alabama, could you just give us what the real feel for do you feel like Georgia's on the cusp of being a nationally recognized program when people start talking about who's the best programs are?
Oh, I think they're already there. Really, everybody knows everything. The only thing they lack is the final championship. To win the national championship, certainly elevates you into that status. It keeps you from having the one thing missing from the resume. But I think that in terms of the elite programs, that Kirby's already elevated Georgia to that realm. I think people will look at it there, and they're not looking at the national championship question as will they, can they, will they ever. It will just be when will they, and eventually it'll happen. And when it does, then all of those, anybody that might have a question like that will have that question answered. But to me, I'm one of those guys, and I'm not trying to diminish the teams that win a bunch of championships or anything like that. It's hard. It's not easy to go out there and win championships. Even if you have really good players, things have to fall right sometimes. And, I think it's a really difficult thing to do. And that's obvious. It's pretty obvious. But Georgia's got elite players. They've got tremendous coaching. They're hot in recruiting. All of the things that you need. And eventually, they'll win a championship. And so I think they're already in that realm with the Alabamas and the Clemsons and the Ohio States.
Yeah, in '85 we won the championship at Oklahoma, but '86 and '87 we were actually a lot better. But the way the cookie crumbled. We lost Jamel Holloway and didn't get to play with him in the championship game, and we also fumbled 2 punts against Miami in the regular season. Didn't get to play in '86. So it happens. That's just the way sports happen. But how about dealing with Kirby from a media relationship? When you come in here, I'm sure it's a relaxed atmosphere in a lot of ways, but he's very intense. What's it like to deal with Kirby?
I think he's really been great, and a lot of things come in. The improvement comes with the repetition, and just over the years, you've just seen Kirby get more and more comfortable in front of the camera. He's always been good, but he's really improved when he joins us on the set in terms of being TV savvy. And giving you good stuff, and when we'll throw a piece of tape at him, he handles the tape. He's obviously a smart guy and quick on his feet. I think when we were there, if memory serves, when we were there for the Notre Dame game, we showed the piece as part of the CFB 150 of Mark Schleybaugh when his dog got loose on the field. And Kirby
I was coaching in that game.
Yeah, and Kirby was on the field for you, right? I think at that time, and. So Kirby talked about his memory. He just instantly jumped right into it and told a very compelling story. And it wasn't one of those things where, this is the day of the game. This is, 8 hours before kickoff. How dare they talk about a stray dog being loose on the field? I guess Schleybaugh would be offended if I called it a stray, but, he was very, very loose. And, he treats us extraordinarily well. And, it's always fun to go to Athens and deal with everybody at Georgia.
Yeah, Mike Leach was the coordinator for Kentucky that day for Hal Mumme. They must have thrown 9 million passes, not even counting warm-ups. And I didn't think the game would ever end. But Kirby reflects on that. Just closing down here, from your perspective, and I'm not asking you to project something. I mean, what's your feel for what are they telling you? What's all going to be involved in this decision here about when these kids can come back? Obviously, we know about the scientists and all that. What's your gut feel on what's going to happen here for next fall?
I don't know that I have a gut feel, Jim, just to be honest with you. It's what the phrase that I have used from the beginning and remains my most honest answer to this is hopefully optimistic. Probably a little bit redundant, but I look back 2 months and see how our world has changed in 2 months, and most of that has been for the worse, obviously, with this pandemic. And I just remain hopeful that something will break that will allow us as drastic a change in a positive direction over the next couple of months. I mean, it's very obvious to everyone that if we are still sitting in this situation in August, we can't have football games. I mean, we're still sitting where we are right now. It looks as if things are improving, but hopefully it will be a situation where we find a way to play, even if it is abbreviated, truncated, adjusted, whatever it might be. I think it would be good for good for the morale of people if we can play. But the most important thing is we have to be able to play safely for anybody who's in the stadium. Even if it's an empty stadium, the players have to be safe. The officials, supposed necessary personnel, as they call it. All of those people have to be safe. And the thing that I keep coming back to as a bit of a warning is when we were covering the NCAA tournament being canceled and all the conference tournaments being postponed, news came that an official in a conference tournament game in the Colonial Athletic Association had tested positive for the coronavirus. Now, he didn't know it at the time. He was not, exhibiting symptoms that night, but I guess the next morning he was. So now you have the essential personnel, a member of the essential personnel, a game official, who was unknowingly a carrier. Are we at a point where we can mitigate that risk? What types of advances have we made to be able to lessen that type of situation from happening? How do we protect the players? How do we protect, everybody associated with it? That's the hard part, and that's the reason that I don't know that I have a gut feel. I just hope and am optimistic that maybe something, whether it's in treatment or testing or a combination of that, or naturally things just diminishing or the threat diminishing somehow. I'm just hopeful that we will have as drastic a change over the next 2 months as we've had in the last 2 months.
Yeah, that's well spoken. I mean, for sure, we all got ideas about it, but as much as we need football and as much as we need athletics and sports in general, we just got to find some way to test everybody. And, for my situation with my wife's illness, I mean, people that got these pre-existing conditions, it's hard to really fathom getting out there now. So we just got to work around it. And I'm going to give my cohort Dane here. He wants to ask you one more question. We're going to let you go. But from my standpoint, we'll stay in touch. But this means a lot to our fans for you to reach out because all of us really like being able to talk to people that are outside the program. And this is part of the way we try to do this, and we really appreciate your time today.
Oh, I'm happy to do it, Jim. Always good to talk to you.
And Rece, I don't know if you realize the tables are turned a little bit for this, and the fact that Jim Donnan took questions from media for all those years, and here he is on that side of it. So I want you to grade his interviewing ability.
I think Jim gets an A. Jim's always. I think one thing that happens with coaches when they come over to the dark side, they find out, the first thing they find out is, all these people weren't out to get me all of these years. That's right. The first thing they figure out. And I think they usually respond pretty well after that.
And, one of the things I point out to these coaches and these sideline people, they're not out there to try to screw you over. I mean, you act like you got to get inside. What are you going to do inside in 20 minutes? You're not going to do it. Just sit there and answer Maria Taylor's question. Hey, these people are trying to help you. And I've been able to get that across to a couple of them, but some of them are still pretty stubborn at that.
Mike Leach told me one time, he said, this was early in his head coaching career at Texas Tech. He said, I really want to get better at those halftime interviews. He goes, but they asked me some question, and he said, and all I can think of to answer is, I want to score more points.
That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Well, Rece, we can't thank you enough for your time. I know it's precious around here, and best to you and your family, because I know you're spending a lot more time around them, and good luck with the draft.
Thanks a lot, guys. You guys take care.